Good evening, folks. And tonight we're going to talk about. This is the 100-year anniversary of the Tri State Tornado. March 18th, 1925 is the 100-year anniversary of the Tri State Tornado. However, before we get into that, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications. With that being said, we're going to get into something that has been done a while back ago. But we're going to talk about another situation that occurred to where we get to there. And other things. But we'll talk about this tri-state tornado first. Now, with the counts of the deaths, you have multiple cities that were affected by this tornado and are kind of affected by it today. Some are, some aren't. I mean, some have been officially wiped off the map and are no longer even in existence. Others are still there, but still have side effects from it. I mean, in Missouri, you had 2 towns wiped off that were literally wiped off the map. In Illinois, you had literally 2 towns that were literally wiped off the map, and you had 5 towns that were literally destroyed, that were affected. 1 town mostly affected really badly because it had 234. We'll name every town and their casualty rate and their percentage of the town destroyed. And in Indiana, they had like 3 different towns damaged and mass casualties in those towns as well. Now, as big as Annapolis, Missouri is, that's technically where in Englewood a tornado was first reported. Back in those days, we'll get down to how this all done. Back in those days, tornado sirens weren't even used back in those days. I mean, sirens weren't even used back then. They weren't even thought of. I mean, believe it or not, my great-grandma Gower was actually a fire warden. And she actually spotted a tornado one time that she told me that was big enough that could literally swallow literally half of everything. And she called it into the National Weather Service. This was back during the 50s. She called, actually not the 50s, but the 70s. She called it in the National Weather Service, and they called it in. This is like in 1970, I want to say 75? The year after it all occurred, and they called it in. And she worked in Perry County, and she was a fire warden. And it was amazing. But that's an amazing story about what she told me. I'll get into that some other time. But back to where I was at. They had the towns of Annapolis. These were the casualty rates. Annapolis, 4 dead. Town was like 90% destroyed. I'm not real good with pronunciation, so I apologize for anyone who hears this. Behaley, Beihle, I don't know how that's pronounced, but Beal, I think. 4 dead. The town was literally wiped off the map. That's Missouri. 4 dead, leaving 8 casualties in Missouri. Then the one that really got the hammer, Gorham, 37 dead. The town wiped off the map. Murfreesboro, 40% destroyed. And to the state, it has the most casualties of any tornado. 234 dead. DeSoto, 30%, 69 dead. West Frankfort, 20 dead, 148 dead, 20% damaged. I worded that wrong. Parrish, 22 dead, 90% injured. 90% damaged, 90% destroyed, so literally almost the entire town. And then Griffin, then we go to Indiana. All those other towns were Illinois. Gorham, Illinois, Murfreesboro, Illinois, DeSoto, Illinois, West Frankfort, Illinois, and Parrish, Illinois. Then we got Griffin, Indiana, 100% destroyed. Another town wiped off the map. 25 dead. Owensville, they weren't really 100% sure how much percentage of the town was destroyed, but they said 4 were killed. 4 were reported dead. Princeton, 25% of the town was destroyed. 45 were reported dead. Making the total for Illinois, 510 reported dead, and in Indiana, 74. 592 were reported, but supposedly 695 were reported to be dead altogether through the tri-state tornado. So, somewhere along the line, 103 must have died that were unaccounted for through these tornadoes. Now, these are only going through these towns. Now, outside these areas, people probably died that were not accounted for. It's outside of these towns where people died. It brought devastation. These towns were devastating. These tornadoes were devastating. Livestock was lost. Lots of livestock was lost in this tornado. I mean, it affected a lot of people. It crossed the Mississippi into Gorham. Then it affected Murfreesboro, DeSoto. Then it went into Parrish, West Frankfort, then Parrish. And it traveled, just got bigger as it went. Then it crossed the Wabash River into Indiana and hit little parts of Indiana and cracked right through Griffin, Owensville, and Princeton, and literally died about 45 minutes later. That's literally what this panned out to be. Traveled 219 miles. It was a fast-moving tornado. 73 miles per hour, too. Normally, like how fast some people normally would drive on like an interstate highway going from one state to another. That's literally how they drive. I've seen people do that constantly when I go someplace. Now, if you rewind this, Sergeant John P. Finley was put in charge of the Army Corps back in 1882 to study tornadoes. And he would issue tornado alerts in 1883. But in 1883, Edward Holden proposed an automatic tornado warning system by using telegraph wires. Many of those aspects of the system are used today. Kind of weird, isn't it? Alarm bells would use alarm bells, then a cannon would sound, and then a cannon would be used. So in other words, they would take alarm bells all around this town, and a cannon would be used to warn them of a tornado was coming. Here comes a tornado. Now, the word tornado was banned until 1948, when the first tornado watch and warning were issued at Tinker Air Force Base by Captain Robert Miller and Major Ernest J. Fawbush. At the watch was issued around 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, and a warning was issued between 4 and 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Lots of planes were damaged, and it actually hit. On June 11th, the first time a tornado siren was actually used was June 11th, 1958. Was the first use of a tornado siren for Wichita, Kansas, the day after the famous El Dorado tornado that one was exceptional. Considering literally half there during World War II, sirens were used a lot during World War II because air raid sirens were used due to the fact that during that time of war, there's lots of war going on because of all that. Now, in the 1970s, multiple things occurred. Nixon made tornado sirens universal because we were up against the Soviets, and the Soviets kept on using nuclear bombs, testing nuclear bombs and everything. But the first radar usage of Doppler radar done on TV was done in 1961. It broadcasted everybody about a tornado coming in 1961. Now in Butler County, where El Dorado, Kansas is, 15 were dead, 57 were injured. Now that was another devastating tornado. But then in 1953, Donald Staggs made the first observation of a hook echo as well. Meaning, you can obviously distinguish where the formation of the thunderstorm is coming, because when they bow out, that normally makes it a hook echo, or a bow echo, is where you want to call it. That normally indicates where the tornado is at on a storm on radar. Back in 1944, in the middle of World War II, about the time of World War II, you could actually shoot out a beam of radiation, bounce it off of raindrops, and get a result back of it off there, and actually gives you a color radiation of where you get a storm is coming from. I mean, literally, if you look up the history of Doppler radar of weather usage, it tells you a lot about how it was used. And in 1948, it was used actually significantly, and then they actually used a lot of them back at that time frame because Doppler radar was very useful then. Well, I got some stuff I got to take care of. With that being said, I'm out of here. I hope you enjoyed the movie. Peace.